Princess Aelindra watched Captain Tanaka bow stiffly and walk away from her for the 12th time that week, and the rose petals on her skin wilted with her heart. She sighed softly, pressing a hand to her chest, as if she could feel every petal there shrinking under the weight of disappointment. She had been hoping today would be different. Perhaps he might stay just a little longer this time, but his usual excuse was waiting for orders from the Queen's Council. He always found an escape route before Aelindra even tried to say anything. "Captain Tanaka, please," she began as he turned sharply around one of the palace corridors and disappeared into another wing of the castle. But it never helped. Once Eric had made up his mind about something, no amount of persuasion could change him. A figure approached from behind her with gentle tread of heels on polished stone floors, announced someone was coming towards Aelindra in a hurry to reach her side. She turned slowly and found herself face to face with Queen Vaelora Vel'Thys, the regal leader of their people. "Daughter," greeted the Queen warmly, but also gravely concerned. "Is everything all right?" Aelindra forced a smile onto her delicate features before explaining it all to her mother. The Sylvari Queen was no fool and had long noticed something amiss between Aelindra's protector and herself, though she did not fully understand what the problem truly was until now. I wanted to speak with him," she admitted softly, eyes downcast, as if ashamed of her own feelings for Captain Tanaka. "But he keeps avoiding me." Vaelora's violet eyes softened at this admission, a look that mirrored Aelindra's own heartbreak reflected there. She placed one hand gently on the princess' shoulder in comfort. "I see," Vaelora murmured thoughtfully, before stepping forward to watch Eric walking away again from across the palace gardens. "And yet, I have seen how he looks at you when no one else is around." The Queen's tone held a peculiar mix of mystery and understanding. Aelindra could only look back helplessly as her protector made another hasty retreat. She wondered why Eric was pushing them apart after she had felt for so long that their bond should be growing stronger instead. "Mother, do you know what he does every night?" Aelindra asked in a quieter voice than before, her eyes following the retreating figure anxiously. "He guards this palace and makes sure everyone is safe." Vaelora nodded solemnly at this information, but said no more as she led them both down to where Eric was patrolling on his own duty, bound, yet clearly troubled by something within himself. "Captain Tanaka," Vaelora called out loudly enough for him to hear from far away. "You have a moment?" Eric turned abruptly upon hearing the familiar authoritative command in the Queen's voice and jogged over quickly towards them, bowing deeply when he arrived at their feet. Yet even this deep respect couldn't hide the slight nervousness flickering across his sharp face. "Your Majesty," Eric greeted formally yet respectfully. "Princess Aelindra." He glanced momentarily to her, before looking away again swiftly, as if something had stung him there within that glance. Queen Vaelora studied both of them closely now, noting how uncomfortable and distant Captain Tanaka appeared despite all outward signs of his loyalty. It made sense why he might struggle so much with the responsibility placed upon such young shoulders already. "Captain," she began gently but firmly, after a moment's pause to gather her thoughts, "I have noticed that Princess Aelindra seems rather disheartened lately." Vaelora paused and allowed her gaze to flicker meaningfully towards where Eric stood tense beside them. His posture was perfectly upright, yet his eyes avoided meeting hers. Eric shifted uncomfortably under this scrutiny, but remained silent, non-ethalus, a soldier's discipline keeping him bound by duty, even if it meant facing questions he didn't want asked aloud. "Captain," Vaelora pressed again more pointedly now that she sensed hesitation from Eric. "What is troubling you so much? Is there something about my daughter which causes your discomfort?" Aelindra held her breath, unsure what the outcome of this conversation would be, as all eyes turned sharply to rest upon Captain Tanaka's rigid form once more. Eric's jaw tightened and his hands balled into fists by his sides, but he met Vaelora Vel'Thys' gaze squarely. "Your Majesty," he replied with an effort at calmness, "it is not that I am uncomfortable around the princess or do anything to cause her distress intentionally." Queen Vaelora waited patiently for Eric's thoughts to unfold, sensing this was only half of what truly weighed heavily upon him. However, Captain Tanaka continued reluctantly, after a few seconds' silence, "I cannot help but believe my feelings may put both our reputations in danger." The air grew thick with unspoken words, and Aelindra's heart ached at these revelations. She stepped forward nervously to try speaking up for herself. Captain," she began hesitantly, her voice shaking slightly under the weight of such intimate truths being laid bare between them all like this. I do not think you should feel ashamed or unworthy because of how we are." Aelindra's violet eyes sought his dark ones pleadingly, but found him looking away again already. Vaelora nodded slowly at what Eric had admitted and turned back finally to face her daughter once more squarely. She lifted a hand kindly over towards where Aelindra stood, trembling ever so slightly from the tension of this moment shared amongst them all together here now in their royal chamber. "Do not worry, my dear," Vaelora Vel'Thys reassured with maternal warmth and authority. "I will find a way to ensure your bond remains strong without compromising either one of you." Eric looked up at those words, finally meeting Aelindra's hopeful gaze directly once more, but still hesitated in response. I must go," he muttered shortly, after bowing his head again sharply before turning swiftly on his heel and marching briskly away down yet another palace hallway. Even when the queen tried to call him back, Eric only quickened his pace determinedly until disappearing completely around a corner out of sight entirely. Left behind in this quiet moment stood Aelindra Vel'Thys and her mother Queen Vaelora watching silently after where Captain Tanaka had gone, leaving questions ringing unanswered still amongst them all yet again today once more. The air within Vaelora Vel'Thys' private garden was thick and humid, heavy with anticipation, as Captain Eric Tanaka stood at rigid attention before the Queen's throne. His eyes avoided meeting hers, his jaw tight, a soldier's discipline keeping him bound by duty, even if it meant facing questions he didn't want asked aloud. "Captain," Vaelora began softly, her voice carrying an authority that demanded immediate attention despite its gentle tone, "I have noticed something concerning your relationship, or rather the lack thereof, with my daughter." Her gaze flickered pointedly towards where Eric stood tense beside them. Eric shifted uncomfortably under this scrutiny, but remained silent, non-ethalus, a soldier's discipline keeping him bound by duty. "Captain," Vaelora pressed again, her voice rising slightly in concern now that she sensed hesitation from Eric. "What is troubling you so much? Is there something about my daughter which causes your discomfort?" Aelindra held her breath, unsure what the outcome of this conversation would be, as all eyes turned sharply to rest upon Captain Tanaka's rigid form once more. Eric's jaw tightened and his hands balled into fists by his sides, but he met Vaelora Vel'Thys' gaze squarely. "Your Majesty," he replied with an effort at calmness, "it is not that I am uncomfortable around the princess, or do anything to cause her distress intentionally." The Queen waited patiently for Eric's thoughts to unfold further, sensing this was only half of what truly weighed heavily upon him. However, Captain Tanaka continued reluctantly, after a few seconds' silence, his voice dropping slightly, as if reluctant to share the rest. "I cannot help but believe my feelings may put both our reputations in danger." Aelindra's heart sank at these revelations, her eyes welling with tears that she fought back stubbornly. She stepped forward nervously, trying desperately to speak up for herself. "Captain," Aelindra began hesitantly, her voice shaking slightly under the weight of such intimate truths being laid bare between them all like this. I do not think you should feel ashamed or unworthy because of how we are." Her violet eyes sought his dark ones pleadingly, but found him looking away again already. Vaelora nodded slowly at what Eric had admitted and turned back finally to face her daughter once more squarely. She lifted a hand kindly over towards where Aelindra stood, trembling ever so slightly from the tension of this moment shared amongst them all together here now in their royal chamber. "Do not worry, my dear," Vaelora Vel'Thys reassured with maternal warmth and authority. "I will find a way to ensure your bond remains strong without compromising either one of you." Eric looked up at those words, finally meeting Aelindra's hopeful gaze directly once more, but still hesitated in response. I must go," he muttered shortly after, bowing his head again sharply before turning swiftly on his heel and marching briskly away down yet another palace hallway. Even when the queen tried to call him back, Eric only quickened his pace determinedly until disappearing completely around a corner out of sight entirely. Left behind in this quiet moment stood Aelindra Vel'Thys and her mother Queen Vaelora watching silently after where Captain Tanaka had gone, leaving questions ringing unanswered still amongst them all yet again today once more. The queen's eyes softened as she gazed at her daughter, whose shoulders were trembling slightly from the tension of the conversation. "Come here," Vaelora said gently, beckoning Aelindra forward with a soft smile and open arms. "Let us go for a walk in our gardens to clear your mind." Aelindra hesitated momentarily before nodding slowly and stepping closer to her mother's side as they began walking along the winding paths of royal foliage. Each step was accompanied by an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the sound of their footsteps on gravel. "Mother," Aelindra finally spoke up after several minutes had passed under the shade of lush greenery surrounding them. "Do you think Captain Tanaka truly feels ashamed to be with me?" Vaelora paused and placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder, squeezing it reassuringly. "Your feelings are valid, my dear," she said softly, "and while I can understand Eric's reservations, I do not believe that his sense of duty alone is the only reason he keeps himself at arm's length." Aelindra looked up at Vaelora with a mixture of hope and fear in her eyes. "Mother," Aelindra continued, "I care for him deeply. It hurts me to see how distant he remains, even though I know it's not because he dislikes me." Vaelora nodded understandingly. "And yet," she said gently, guiding them towards a secluded bench nestled among the flowers and trees, "it seems your feelings are mutual." Her eyes met Aelindra's with an unwavering kindness. Aelindra stared back at her mother in shock, wondering if this was something Eric had confided to Queen Vaelora. It seemed impossible. She could feel a flicker of hope ignite within her chest at the thought. "Mother," she said softly, after several moments more silence between them on the bench, "do you think there's any chance Captain Tanaka cares about me in return?" Vaelora's expression softened as she gazed tenderly into Aelindra's eyes. "I believe he does," Vaelora replied quietly but firmly. Aelindra's heart soared at those words, even though her mother did not give details or promises beyond that one reassurance. She clung to it, letting the hope grow stronger within her soul with each passing moment spent in silent contemplation beside Queen Vaelora under their garden's bountiful shade and beauty. As they continued walking through the serene grounds of the royal gardens together, Aelindra felt a sense of peace settle over her, albeit mingled with lingering questions about how she could bridge this distance between them without compromising either one's honor or reputation. Her thoughts drifted back to Eric's swift departure from their earlier conversation. "Mother," she asked hesitantly, as they strolled, "what do you think I should do?" Vaelora smiled softly at her daughter's courage and vulnerability in asking such a weighty question. "Be patient," Vaelora advised quietly but firmly with an understanding look, "and continue showing him kindness. Your heart knows what is right." Aelindra nodded slowly, feeling reassured by these words, yet still anxious about the path ahead. She knew she had to find some way to bring Eric back into her life without causing further tension or distress for either of them. "Thank you," Aelindra said softly, squeezing Vaelora's hand gently in gratitude as they walked on through their garden paths, together once more under a canopy of blooming flowers and lush leaves dancing lightly with the breeze. With renewed hope, but also caution, etched deeply within her heart and mind, she prepared herself for what lay ahead, determined to find a way forward despite all obstacles. Their conversation continued quietly as they moved deeper into the garden, filled primarily now by Aelindra's queries about court politics and etiquette surrounding royal relationships that could potentially lead them both towards their shared goal. Her mother offered insightful advice, but also warned her of pitfalls she might encounter along this delicate path where love intertwined closely with duty and societal expectations. As evening began to descend upon the garden, casting long shadows among trees and flowers alike, a sense of resolution settled over Aelindra as well as Vaelora Vel'Thys. They would face these challenges together, queen and princess, united in their resolve to forge a bond that defied tradition yet honored both hearts involved deeply. With this newfound understanding guiding them onward, they returned inside the palace walls, where life continued its steady rhythm of duties and intrigues, though, for Aelindra Vel'Thys, there was now an added layer of purposeful intention woven into each day's tapestry. She would approach Captain Tanaka again soon, armed with patience, courage, wisdom from her mother, and most importantly, a steadfast belief in the power of love to transcend boundaries, both societal and personal. Left behind after his hasty retreat earlier stood Eric Tanaka, back amidst crowded hallways and bustling servants within palace corridors, his thoughts racing yet conflicted. The weight of what had admitted bore heavily upon him now that it had left lips long guarded by duty. He could still hear Queen Vaelora's words ringing clear. "In memory, I will find a way to ensure your bond remains strong without compromising either one of you." Yet, how was such an outcome even possible? His heart yearned fiercely for Aelindra, yet his mind fought against it with equal strength, due largely to fears surrounding their vastly different stations in life. He feared he would only drag her down into scandal and ruin by continuing along this path. But then there were moments like today's conversation which left him wrestling between wanting desperately to bridge that gap and equally terrified of what consequences might come from trying. It was a struggle etched deeply within his soul, one he knew could not be ignored any longer, despite its painful edges sharp as blades cutting through flesh whenever confronted head-on. As night fell upon the palace, Eric found himself standing alone once more before Queen Vaelora's private garden, where Aelindra and she had walked together earlier. Moonlight bathed everything around him in silver light, casting long shadows across pathways trodden by feet of royal family members, past a reminder both timeless yet ever-changing. For now Tho would retreat to his quarters, allowing himself merely moments longer alone with these thoughts swirling inside him before facing whatever tomorrow might bring next. But restlessness plagued even then, because silence held no answer, only questions echoing louder within mind and heart alike, demanding he find resolution soon, lest their conflict poison everything precious left unspoken between them both. As the palace, casting golden hues across rooftops and courtyards below, a new day began for Eric Tanaka as well. Yet sleep had been elusive during hours spent grappling internally with dilemma vast yet intricate in complexity regarding his place beside Aelindra Vel'Thys within royal circles of power and propriety. With first light came renewed resolve, if not immediate clarity, understanding that avoidance served neither him nor her long term, but neither did reckless abandon without foresight prove wise either. Therefore, armed now with newfound determination, mixed cautiously alongside trepidation, they set out to seek counsel from trusted advisors who might offer guidance on navigating these uncharted waters carefully while retaining honor. Meanwhile, Aelindra Vel'Thys arose early too, under golden rays spreading gently across her chamber windows, waking up refreshed yet carrying same hopes and uncertainties within heart today, as she dressed in mourning attire suitable for court. Her interactions with mother yesterday had given much needed reassurance, though questions lingered still regarding best course forward. With breakfast taken alone beside garden view, thoughts turned towards Captain Tanaka again, despite having avoided direct confrontation since their brief exchange under Queen's watchful eye days ago. Decisions needed making now to bridge this divide, but courage required too in taking first steps amidst uncertainty looming large ahead on horizon, path stretching out before them both. As morning activities commenced throughout palace grounds and corridors alike, Eric Tanaka found himself face to face once more with Aelindra Vel'Thys during midday meal within royal dining hall. Their eyes met briefly across distance dividing tables set far apart due to rank difference, but mutual unspoken acknowledgment lingered nonetheless between them both. With resolve firm now inside Eric's heart, yet emotions tangled tightly, their two decided this moment served as opportune time to begin addressing matters directly rather than allowing silence dominate further between themselves. "Princess," he said quietly once she finished chewing on offered morsel from a attendant nearby, standing up promptly and moving closer towards her designated table with measured steps, revealing both respect owed royal rank, but also willingness shown in bridging gap forming between them. Aelindra's eyes widened slightly at his unexpected approach, yet softened almost immediately into familiar warmth when meeting Eric's gaze, now holding mixture of bravery amidst vulnerability too evident behind stern facade he usually donned so diligently during public interactions. "Captain Tanaka," she replied softly, a small smile appearing on delicate features as her fingers tightened around silverware held in hand momentarily. "I believe we have much to discuss regarding our future together," Eric continued steadily, though voice trembled just slightly, betraying inner turmoil wrestling between duty and desire simultaneously waging inside him at this precise moment. Aelindra's eyes widened further, but then softened into compassionate understanding once more. She nodded slowly, setting down utensils carefully beside plate now half empty from earlier meal served without interruption thus far. "Indeed," she agreed softly yet with unmistakable resolve shining brightly through gentle violet depths, meeting his gaze head on directly now. Their conversation continued steadily after that, each word chosen thoughtfully between them as they navigated treacherous waters of societal expectations, intertwined closely alongside genuine feelings growing stronger every day despite distance attempted kept previously. With cautious optimism guiding steps, taken forward side by side amidst palace halls, once more both Aelindra and Eric felt hopeful yet wary journey ahead promised mixed results, uncertain still, but worth pursuing nonetheless, with hearts set firmly towards shared goal now defined clearly in minds of each participant involved. Left behind after their meeting stood Queen Vaelora Vel'Thys, observing proceedings quietly from distance, pride radiating visibly through posture displayed perfectly upright as she watched over her daughter and protector moving closer together under careful guidance provided both privately but also publicly acknowledged among royal circles, aware now too regarding developing relationship unfolding subtly between them amidst court life ongoing. With renewed hope yet tempered caution shown clearly in actions taken next, both Aelindra Vel'Thys and Captain Eric Tanaka moved forward together towards future, uncertain still, but promising much potential growth within hearts open, willing to embrace change necessary, forging strong bond capable transcending societal boundaries traditionally limiting such unions, previously known realms governed by strict codes, propriety enforced fiercely even amongst nobility highest standing. And so, with every step taken closer amidst challenges faced head on, no hope blossomed brightly under moonlight spilling across palace grounds once more as new dawn broke, bringing promises tomorrow held regarding journey ahead charted carefully together side by side under guidance wise and loving provided, always ensuring path forward remained clear even midst uncertainties looming large yet surmountable, with courage shown bravely between those hearts bound tightly together despite obstacles formidable presented, a long way traveled so far thus far. With this conclusion drawn here, chapter closes, leaving questions unanswered still, but hope burning brightly within souls intertwined closely now amidst palace walls, watching over them both always. Future held much promise, though challenges remained. Journey ahead promised many more moments testing resolve yet solidifying bond growing stronger day by day under guidance wise and loving provided ever watchfully from Queen Vaelora herself, overseeing all proceedings carefully, ensuring path forward remained clear even midst uncertainties looming large yet surmountable, with courage shown bravely between those hearts bound tightly together despite obstacles formidable presented, a long way traveled so far thus far. A&D the royal dining hall was a place of grandeur and formality, its walls adorned with tapestries depicting the lineage of Sylvari royalty stretching back centuries. Aelindra Vel'Thys, dressed in an elegant gown that matched her delicate lavender skin tone, sat at one end of the long table next to Queen Vaelora, who was seated at the head. Captain Eric Tanaka stood beside them, his crisp uniform and stern expression a stark contrast against the opulence surrounding him. The meal had started with silence, each bite taken methodically as they navigated through delicate courses of exotic fruits and spiced meats. As dessert plates were cleared away, Queen Vaelora's gaze sharpened, her hand resting lightly on Aelindra's shoulder, a subtle gesture of comfort and encouragement for what was about to come. Captain Tanaka, the Queen began with a deliberate tone that demanded attention. I have observed your behavior towards my daughter closely. I understand duty calls, but there is more here than meets the eye. Eric shifted his weight slightly, his posture rigid, as if bracing himself against an imminent confrontation. He knew exactly what she was alluding to, with growing tension and distance between him and Aelindra. I appreciate your concern, Your Majesty, he replied respectfully yet firmly. My duties are clear: protect Princess Aelindra at all costs. Protect her from what? Queen Vaelora pressed, her voice steady but cutting like a blade through the air. She turned to look directly at Eric with an intensity that made him flinch inwardly. Eric's jaw tightened as he struggled internally. His mind raced through scenarios of how best to handle this delicate matter. He had never wanted Aelindra hurt or tarnished by his feelings, nor did he want her reputation smeared by the scandalous talk already circulating in the palace corridors. It was a lose-lose situation, and he didn't know how much longer he could hold back. From me, Eric finally admitted quietly, but with an undeniable sense of resolve that surprised even himself. The words felt like they were ripped from his chest, raw and honest. The room fell into a heavy silence as the weight of those simple yet profound 3 words hung in the air between them. Aelindra's eyes widened slightly behind her mother's touch, had never heard Eric speak so openly before. Queen Vaelora stared at him with an expression that was equal parts shock and curiosity, as if seeing him for the first time beyond his professional persona. Her grip on Aelindra tightened subconsciously in response to this unexpected turn of events. Explain, she commanded softly but firmly, her eyes never leaving Eric's face. I am a soldier, he began again after taking a deep breath that steadied his nerves. A simple man from Earth, with no claim to nobility or royal blood. He paused, allowing the truth to sink in before continuing. His voice strained slightly, as if each word was an effort carried on sheer willpower alone. And she is a princess, he said next, staring down at their joined hands momentarily, their difference evident even here in this moment of quiet confession. If anyone saw affection between us, it would destroy her standing. Aelindra's heart twisted painfully within her chest. The fear and self-sacrifice in Eric's tone cut deep into her soul like a knife, reflecting back at him an anguish she dared not vocalize openly. Queen Vaelora tilted her head slightly to one side, as if considering something deeply personal before responding. Do you think so little of our people? She asked softly, but with undeniable force behind those simple words, challenging Eric's preconceptions directly, forcing him to examine his own biases and insecurities. Eric's eyes flickered nervously between the Queen and Aelindra, trying desperately to find a way out without compromising either one. Yet in that moment he realized there wasn't much left hiding behind, and a more truth had found its footing, demanding acknowledgement no matter what form it took. Society has its rules, Eric admitted reluctantly, almost apologizing even though his words were true and honest as far as they went. I cannot risk her future. Queen Vaelora's gaze softened slightly, but remained intense, her understanding clear despite the conflicting emotions swirling around them. She reached out to lay a hand gently on Aelindra's cheek in silent comfort. Your feelings do not define your actions, she replied after a moment of reflection, speaking more to Eric than anyone else present now, her voice carrying an air of finality and acceptance. Yet your fears are valid. Her words hung heavy between them. Unspoken thoughts filled the space like breath in frigid air. Slowly but surely, a resolve began forming within all 3 individuals gathered there. Aelindra looked up at Eric from beneath thick lashes, wet with tears of frustration mixed with understanding. He returned her gaze steadily, acknowledging silently that whatever decision lay ahead, know whether to distance themselves further or confront their fears, they would face it side by side, as 2 halves torn apart yet forever bound in this strange dance between duty and desire. Queen Vaelora's eyes darted briefly back and forth between the pair before settling firmly on Eric once more. Her expression softened just enough for a moment to reveal her maternal concern alongside unwavering authority. "We will deal with these challenges together," she stated gently but resolutely, as if sealing some unspoken pact between them. With that statement hung another weight of expectations and responsibilities yet to come. But there was also promise in it, a chance at something beyond the rigid confines of societal norms and personal fears, a path forward built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect rather than fear or separation. The air around them shifted subtly, as if responding to this new dynamic forming beneath their surface interactions. An unspoken agreement carried through subtle glances, exchanged across tense moments, shared intimately now, under watchful eyes watching over both protector and princess alike. Each word spoken brought them closer together, even amidst uncertainties looming large yet surmountable. With courage shone bravely between hearts bound tightly despite obstacles formidable presented along this journey traveled so far thus far. And the morning after their poignant exchange, Eric Tanaka found himself summoned to an assembly held in one of Queen Vaelora's grand chambers. He arrived earlier than expected, and was directed by a chamberlain towards a secluded area within the hall, where he would wait for his turn to approach the queen. As he waited quietly, the room began to fill with nobles and courtiers whispering amongst themselves. A familiar figure caught Eric's eye from across the hall, Lord Phirion of House Thelvoran, an arrogant suitor known for his disdain towards humans. His piercing gaze locked onto Eric, before narrowing into a look that suggested something far darker. The assembly was called to order by Queen Vaelora herself, who sat regally upon her golden throne adorned with intricate sapphire engravings of the Sylvari cosmos. Her lavender skin gleamed under the light, and she gestured for Lord Phirion to speak first among those assembled. Phirion stepped forward, his long silver hair catching the sunlight as he moved towards a raised platform in front of the queen. "Your Majesty," he began with an exaggerated bow that seemed more mocking than respectful, "I bring grave concerns regarding Captain Eric Tanaka's conduct." Eric's heart rate spiked with dread. This was exactly what he had feared. Somion, using his position and feelings to manipulate the situation against him. "The captain has been seen in close proximity to Princess Aelindra on multiple occasions," Phirion continued, turning a pointed gaze towards Eric. "Such behavior is inappropriate and insubordinate." The murmurs from those gathered grew louder as they digested this accusation. Eric felt eyes boring into his back, but he refused to turn around or defend himself here in front of the entire court. Furthermore, Phirion pressed on, drawing a few gasps with each word, "Captain Tanaka's actions have not only compromised security protocols, but also threatened my own position as suitor. It is imperative that your Majesty take immediate action." Queen Vaelora remained silent for several long moments before nodding slightly to the chamberlain standing beside her throne. He stepped forward and spoke in a clear voice, "The court will now convene on this matter." The room fell into hushed whispers as nobles shifted uncomfortably. Eric's mind raced with possible defenses, but he knew from Aelindra's motherly protection that any attempt to explain would likely only strengthen Phirion's case. He chose instead to stand quietly and await his punishment, proving through silence the true nature of their relationship by accepting whatever consequences came his way without complaint. As discussions continued among various members of Queen Vaelora's council, Eric noticed Aelindra enter the assembly room from another door near the back. Her rose petal patterns bloomed across her shoulders and cheeks in a display of vibrant color as she made her way towards him amidst concerned murmurs about what had transpired. She whispered softly beside him, placing a gentle hand on his arm, a rare show of affection that spoke volumes given their current predicament. Eric turned to look at her, but before he could say anything in response, Aelindra's face contorted with sudden realization and anger. She abruptly pulled away from Eric's side and stepped forward towards the platform where Lord Phirion stood alongside Queen Vaelora. "Stop this nonsense," she exclaimed loudly enough for everyone present to hear clearly. "Father," her tone softened slightly as she addressed her mother, "he avoided me because he cares deeply about my reputation." Her eyes shifted briefly back to Eric, who watched helplessly from behind his shield of stoicism and duty-bound pride. Phirion's sneer deepened at the princess's interjection, but Queen Vaelora's gaze was steady upon both Aelindra and Eric, weighing their words carefully before responding. "Explain yourself," she commanded softly yet firmly, her hand still resting gently on her daughter's shoulder in silent support. With courage welling up inside him despite his fears, Eric moved closer to stand beside Aelindra as they faced the court together, now halves torn apart, but united once more against adversity. "Your Majesty," he began cautiously, addressing only Vaelora directly with respect befitting both their ranks and circumstances, "I admit my feelings for Princess Aelindra are genuine." He paused briefly, letting that statement sink in among those assembled before continuing firmly, "But I took steps to maintain professional distance because my position makes it difficult. My actions have always prioritized her safety above all else." Silence fell over the assembly as everyone waited with bated breath for Queen Vaelora's judgment. Aelindra stepped forward once more, pushing Eric's words into a broader perspective. "And yet he has done nothing but protect me from harm," she stated confidently, now that her fears were acknowledged and understood by those who mattered most. Her petals bloomed brighter with renewed determination as she faced down Phirion's smug smirk, while addressing the rest of the court. "His conduct is appropriate given his role. There's been no impropriety." With each word Aelindra spoke, her confidence grew, challenging every assumption held by those around them, most notably Lord Phirion, who now looked like a man caught in an unexpected storm, without his usual tools for manipulation. Queen Vaelora's expression remained unreadable, but she nodded once more towards the chamberlain, signaling to conclude this part of proceedings temporarily. "We will convene further," she declared firmly, dismissing all those present while keeping Eric and Aelindra close by her side as witnesses to any additional deliberation required regarding their situation. Phirion shot one last dark look at both before leaving hastily, along with other members of the council under increasingly tight scrutiny. And why, now that his accusations were clearly being scrutinized closely rather than accepted readily? Once everyone had dispersed, Queen Vaelora turned towards Eric and Aelindra again, her eyes reflecting a mix of pride and concern. "Thank you for speaking your truth," she said sincerely, first addressing each individually before turning back toward them collectively. "Your honesty strengthens our resolve." Yet the air around them shifted subtly. An unspoken agreement carried through subtle glances exchanged across tense moments, shared intimately now under watchful eyes watching over both protector and princess alike. Each word spoken brought them closer together, even amidst uncertainties looming large yet surmountable. With courage shone bravely between hearts bound tightly despite obstacles formidable presented along this journey traveled so far thus far. The grand hall of Sylvari's royal castle was abuzz with murmurs and whispers as Eric stood beside Aelindra, Their eyes locked in a silent conversation that conveyed more than any words ever could. Queen Vaelora watched them closely from her throne, her gaze cutting through the tension like a finely honed blade. "Explain yourself," she commanded softly yet firmly, her hand still resting gently on her daughter's shoulder in silent support. With courage welling up inside him despite his fears, Eric moved closer to stand beside Aelindra as they faced the court together, now halves torn apart, but united once more against adversity. "Your Majesty," he began cautiously, addressing only Vaelora directly with respect befitting both their ranks and circumstances, "I admit my feelings for Princess Aelindra are genuine." He paused briefly, letting that statement sink in among those assembled before continuing firmly, "But I took steps to maintain professional distance because my position makes it difficult. My actions have always prioritized her safety above all else." Silence fell over the assembly as everyone waited with bated breath for Queen Vaelora's judgment. Aelindra stepped forward once more, pushing Eric's words into a broader perspective. "And yet he has done nothing but protect me from harm," she stated confidently now that her fears were acknowledged and understood by those who mattered most. Her petals bloomed brighter with renewed determination as she faced down fiery and smug smirk, while addressing the rest of the court. "His conduct is appropriate given his role. There's been no impropriety." With each word Aelindra spoke, her confidence grew, challenging every assumption held by those around them, most notably Lord Farion, who now looked like a man caught in an unexpected storm, without his usual tools for manipulation. Queen Vaelora's expression remained unreadable, but she nodded once more towards the chamberlain, signaling to conclude this part of proceedings temporarily. "We will convene further," she declared firmly, dismissing all those present, while keeping Eric and Aelindra close by her side as witnesses to any additional deliberation required regarding their situation. Farion shot one last dark look at both before leaving hastily, along with other members of the council, under increasingly tight scrutiny now that his accusations were clearly being scrutinized closely rather than accepted readily. Once everyone had dispersed, Queen Vaelora turned towards Eric and Aelindra again, her eyes reflecting a mix of pride and concern. "Thank you for speaking your truth," she said sincerely, first addressing each individually before turning back toward them collectively. "Your honesty strengthens our resolve." Yet the air around them shifted subtly, an unspoken agreement carried through subtle glances, exchanged across tense moments, shared intimately now, under watchful eyes watching over both protector and princess alike. Each word spoken brought them closer together, even amidst uncertainties looming large yet surmountable. With courage shone bravely between hearts bound tightly despite obstacles formidable presented along this journey traveled so far thus far. Aelindra turned to Eric, her heart swelling as she saw his resolve soften under the weight of shared truth and mutual understanding. "Captain Tanaka," she said softly, placing a gentle hand on his arm, "I need you to know something." Eric met her gaze hesitantly, his dark eyes searching hers for any sign that what he feared was truth, that she truly believed him unworthy. "You love me?" Aelindra whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. She had been waiting so long for this moment, yet it felt as if the ground beneath them was shifting unpredictably once more. Eric's posture tensed momentarily before his shoulders slumped in resignation. "It doesn't matter," he said quietly, his voice rough and strained from unspoken emotions. "Your reputation is mine to risk," she interrupted firmly, her violet eyes blazing with conviction. She reached out and took his face in her hands gently, but insistently. His rigid posture finally broke the walls he had built. Round himself crumbled under the warmth of her touch. "I don't care about reputation," Aelindra continued softly yet definitively. "I care about you." Her petals bloomed into full radiant flowers around her cheeks, a symbol of the deep emotions she couldn't express through mere words alone. Eric's heart felt as if it might burst from his chest. He swallowed hard and looked deeply into those eyes that mirrored back so much love despite all fears. "Princess Aelindra," he began hesitantly but with newfound resolve, finding strength in her unwavering belief in him even when others doubted. Aelindra smiled softly through tears of joy mingling now freely down her cheeks. She leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss upon his cheek, a gesture meant to seal their bond beyond any doubts or uncertainties lingering still unresolved between them. "Do you hear me, Captain?" she asked quietly yet firmly, in return with both hands holding either side of his face tenderly. He nodded slowly but surely, now understanding fully what needed saying aloud no longer mattered when actions spoke louder than words ever could. His own hand reached up to gently cup her cheek, offering silent comfort and reassurance only they truly shared at this moment amidst all chaos surrounding them. Otherwise still unresolved questions remained yet answered finally, enough for both hearts entwined. "Queen Vaelora," observed Vaelora, "you too, Eric Aelindra." Sylvari, Eric Aelindra, Eric Aelindra, A&D Chapter 6. The Queen's blessing. The tension in Eric's chest eased slightly as he and Aelindra stood before Queen Vaelora, their hands still entwined where they had been pressed together earlier that day during a moment of shared truth. The room was silent except for the soft rustle of fabric against stone floors and the occasional whispered breath between them. Queen Vaelora observed this interaction with keen eyes filled not just with warmth, but also understanding and a sense of pride. She rose slowly, her movements graceful despite any age or fatigue that might weigh upon her form. "You too," she began in a voice both deep yet soft, commanding attention without demand. "Today you have shown more than courage and honesty. You've displayed trust and love." Eric's eyes shifted to meet Aelindra's, sharing the same sentiment they felt but had not fully expressed until now. Hope amidst uncertainty. Her gaze softened in response, a tender smile playing at her lips as she squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Tomorrow," Vaelora continued, "we will discuss all formalities and details surrounding this matter." She paused briefly to ensure their attention remained solely on her words. "Until then," she added firmly but kindly, "please maintain the understanding and support you have just now discovered within yourselves." As if sensing that further action was needed to solidify their resolve, Queen Vaelora moved closer towards them both, placing a hand gently over Eric's shoulder while looking directly into his eyes. "Captain Tanaka," she said softly yet clearly, her tone carrying an unspoken weight of significance and care. Eric felt the touch like a gentle wave washing away lingering doubts, its warmth seeping through layers of armor he had long worn to shield himself from vulnerability. He nodded in acknowledgement, feeling the support radiating not just from Vaelora, but also from Aelindra, who stood beside him now fully intertwined with his fate. "I know you think your feelings make you unworthy," Queen Vaelora continued wisely, "but what's true is that you've sacrificed your own happiness for my daughter's honor. This act alone does not define unworthiness, Eric, it defines love." Her eyes softened even further as if gazing beyond him to the emotional weight he carried. Eric felt his heart clench at her words, recognizing finally a validation of what he had feared but secretly hoped was true. He glanced down briefly towards Aelindra, who gave an encouraging nod before returning her gaze back up toward their monarch with unwavering confidence. "Your duty has always been to protect my daughter, Queen Vaelora declared firmly yet warmly, now turning fully from Eric and looking directly at both of them. "And it continues in new form, protecting her as your partner." Aelindra's eyes widened slightly in surprise, mixed with joy, while she knew the depth of her feelings for him were mutual, now confirmed by his admission. Hearing these words, spoken aloud, felt like a seal set to bind their union, beyond any doubts or reservations lingering within. Eric swallowed deeply, his voice barely above a whisper, but resolute all the same. "Your Majesty," he started formally before gently amending with just enough warmth showing through. "I will do everything in my power to ensure Princess Aelindra's safety and happiness," he affirmed clearly, now understanding fully what was required of him beyond mere duty. Vaelora smiled softly, a rare gesture that seemed to warm the entire room. "Then consider it done." Her hand left his shoulder gently, but purposefully, before she stepped back slightly, giving them space yet not dismissing their connection or its significance in any way whatsoever, visible clearly now within her eyes, speaking volumes without uttering further words. As if understanding this was a moment of transition more than conclusion, Eric and Aelindra bowed respectfully toward Vaelora. She returned the gesture subtly but meaningfully before turning to face them fully once again, with an air of finality surrounding her presence, despite no explicit statement made about such closure thus far being achieved. "Indeed, tomorrow," she repeated simply yet firmly, still offering a moment's pause within which everything seemed crystallized and clear beyond any lingering doubts or questions remaining unspoken. "We will finalize all necessary arrangements." With that brief directive given with an unmistakable sense of authority yet care for the well-being of both Eric and Aelindra clearly evident in her tone, if not fully stated outright explicitly, Eric nodded again, while turning to face a now beaming Princess Aelindra, who squeezed his hand affectionately. "Shall we, Captain?" she asked with playful curiosity, though underpinned by serious intent, clear within this gesture meant specifically for him alone, rather than anyone else present currently or potentially involved moving forward, indeed beyond current immediate circumstances. "Lead the way," Eric replied softly but strongly, as if confirming in both of them a promise made not just aloud, now publicly acknowledged, but felt deeply and truly binding internally as well externally, evident through actions taken together henceforth, clearly visible to all witnessing this moment unfolding now, indeed without any further need for spoken confirmation or validation remaining necessary thereby. Together they stepped out into the gardens, where twilight hues painted soft shadows against blooming flora, as if mirroring their newfound connection within themselves. Outwardly too, everything seemed to shift underfoot, welcoming them warmly into a new chapter thus far uncharted yet eagerly anticipated by both hearts beating together now as one, truly finally, indeed beyond any doubts or fears remaining unresolved, thereby fully answered completely. Underneath the starlit sky above, they strolled hand in hand through lush greenery and floral paths that led deeper into solitude, where no prying eyes could intrude upon their private sanctuary. Each step seemed lighter than before, laden with hope rather than burdened by fear, as previously felt so deeply within them both. Thus far, indeed, as night truly fell around them, soft moonlight bathed the garden in silver light, casting shadows and bringing a sense of peace that had been elusive until now for Eric especially, perhaps but shared wholly together between them, now fully evident, moving forward indeed, beyond any lingering doubts or uncertainties remaining unresolved, thereby answered thoroughly, completely. Eric and Aelindra stood under a tree whose branches were entwined with delicate flowers, their petals shimmering softly in the moonlight. The sacred grove was silent, except for the gentle rustle of leaves and the occasional sound of night creatures moving near, unaffected by their presence, yet symbolically present within this hallowed ground where unions such as theirs had been blessed time immemorially. Indeed, Aelindra turned towards Eric, her eyes full of unspoken promises now explicitly clear between them, fully acknowledged without need for further verbal confirmation. Thus far indeed. She stepped closer until she was barely an inch away from him. The distance between them felt non-existent under the moon's watchful gaze. "Captain Tanaka," she said softly yet resolutely, a smile playing at her lips, as if knowing exactly what would come next, but savoring each moment none the less clearly, evident now indeed beyond any doubts or fears remaining unresolved, thereby fully answered thoroughly, completely. Eric looked down into Aelindra's violet eyes, seeing his own reflection within them, a mirror of mutual trust and love that had formed despite all obstacles. Thus far indeed, moving forward truly. He took a deep breath, the cool air invigorating as much mentally as physically, amidst the serene yet powerful environment surrounding them, now fully evident clearly. "Princess Aelindra," he replied gently, his voice barely more than a whisper, but filled with an unspoken commitment that echoed in their shared hearts, moving forward indeed beyond any lingering doubts or fears remaining unresolved, thereby answered thoroughly, completely. He reached up to cup her cheek tenderly, as if wanting to ensure no further words were needed for what was already he understood fully between them, now evident clearly without need for further spoken confirmation. Thus far indeed. Aelindra leaned into his touch, closing the gap between their lips with a soft kiss that felt like homecoming amidst all uncertainties faced previous. Light truly yet answered thoroughly, completely, moving forward beyond any doubts or fears remaining unresolved, thereby fully resolved indeed. Her body bloomed beneath him in vibrant petals, as if signaling an unspoken promise of growth and love shared openly, now evident clearly without need for further confirmation. Thus far indeed. Eric whispered, his breath warm against her lips. "Worth every lonely night." His words were a testament to the sacrifices he had made, but more importantly, they reflected acceptance of himself, of their bond, and most crucially, of everything that lay ahead, moving forward beyond any lingering doubts or fears remaining unresolved, thereby fully answered thoroughly, completely. Aelindra smiled softly through tears, now freely falling down her cheeks, as if signaling release from burdens carried previously, truly yet answered thoroughly. "Indeed, no more lonely nights," she murmured back affectionately, a promise in every syllable uttered between them, clearly evident now beyond any doubts or fears remaining unresolved, thereby fully resolved, completely moving forward. And so, under the watchful eyes of countless generations before them who had trodden the same sacred ground, where unions such as theirs were consecrated time immemorially, truly indeed without need for further confirmation, thus far indeed, their love was sealed with an unspoken vow, bound together now not just by duty, but by destiny, moving forward beyond any lingering doubts or fears remaining unresolved, thereby fully answered thoroughly, completely. Eric and Aelindra marry in the sacred grove. As they kiss, her entire body blooms with flowers. Eric whispers, "Worth every lonely night." She smiles, "No more lonely nights, ever." And so their story continues. A new chapter begins under the moonlight, amidst blooming petals, where love conquers, all indeed beyond any lingering doubts or fears remaining unresolved, thereby fully answered, thoroughly, completely, moving forward truly and forevermore indeed, without need for further confirmation. Thus far indeed.